purpose, we are able to speak with the Anti-Defamation League up in Boston with Executive Director Robert Trestan. Thank you very much for being able to Skype in today.
Thanks for having me today.
Well, I can only imagine it's been an incredibly busy week on top of, I'm sure, already hectic schedules there with what has happened following Charlottesville. We've had a few folks in talking about this, and my sort of first question is to anyone who's involved with the world of hate crimes and hate groups. Were you surprised to see what had occurred in Charlottesville this weekend?
Well, we knew leading up to it that it had the potential to be the largest gathering of white supremacists and people who traffic in bigotry and hate. So we had a sense leading up to it, but it certainly went it went south very, very quickly. And it's really regrettable that so often words turn to confrontation, turn to violence, and in this case there was also a tragic loss of life.
And so talk with us a little bit about the work of the Anti-Defamation League, following those days, I'm sure doing a lot of press appearances. What have your days been like since this past weekend?
Well, across the country, particularly in our Washington, D.C. office and on the ground in Charlottesville, it's extraordinarily busy. So ADL's Center on Extremism monitors all types of extremists from across the spectrum, and we've been doing that for decades, over 100 years. And so in this case, we had a sense and worked with the local communities and law enforcement and public officials in advance, because we did have some we knew that this event was going to occur, and to provide as much background information on what to expect.
And so how do you work with them to prepare them, as you said, identifying sort of people that are known within these worlds? I mean, what level, how does one even prepare for this? And this is kind of going to even segue into what we might be seeing in Boston this weekend. How prepared can you be for events that somehow, it looks like from what we saw in Charlottesville, sometimes it's almost impossible to prepare for?
Well, there's different components. There's a public safety, security component, and it's the law enforcement have the very challenging job of protecting the free speech rights of everyone, and that includes hate and bigoted speech. So when someone comes into a community, they're charged with making sure that they can actually get in safely and exercise their rights. And in cases like this, it becomes really challenging when counter-protesters want to come. Some people want to come and just disseminate a different message. And some come looking for trouble, and you sort of get different groups in between. And so it's critical in situations like this for law enforcement to try and keep groups separated, avoid the confrontation, keep space in between. We have a big event coming up here in Boston on Saturday, which is not a white supremacist event. It's more like the alt-light. But there's a lot of misinformation about what to expect. And in the granting of the permit here in Boston, the city was very clear about no backpacks, no sticks, no weapons. So, people tend to come to these events sometimes, they want to hold a sign. And they take the sign and they staple it to, a small piece of wood. But that piece of wood could easily become a weapon. And so here they've set out some ground rules. I think they probably learned some lessons from what happened in Charlottesville. And hopefully people will come and there will be no confrontation. But there's always a risk.
And one of the things we discussed prior to the show is, on the flip side, folks wanting to show up, express their solidarity in support of the countering views of folks who want to say, look, we're supportive of unity, we're supportive of inclusion, we oppose hate speech, hate crime. Do we expect a large turnout from that component? And again, I'm not labeling under an alt-left umbrella, but do you expect there'll be a lot of people who turn out to say, hey, we're supporters of unity and respect for all here in this country?
I think there's going to be, I think the voice of unity, the voice of equality, the voice of justice for everyone, respect, dignity, humanity, that's what represents Boston in 2017. And there will be an overpowering and sort of overwhelming collective voice on that side on Saturday. Some people will be going to the Common. There's going to be an alternative event at City Hall Plaza happening at the same time. And, you know, that's actually a good thing. It provides an opportunity and a safe place without confronting people, for people to come with their children and families, because those views are really what represents the city, Massachusetts, and the country. And so people want to come out and overpower any voices or images of hate or bigotry.
And how, as we're here, Robert, in 2017, has neo-Nazism gotten to the level of which we've seen? Again, you've seen the Vice video, you've seen what they were chanting down in Charlottesville. Here at Go Local, we had a piece today. The founder of the American Nazi Party got his roots here in Providence, went to Central High School, went to Brown University, and as we reported, did some business with former crime boss Raymond Patriarca. But how did it get to where it is today in 2017 after everything that's gone on all these years?
One of the unique things about Charlottesville is that a lot of different white supremacist, extremist, neo-Nazi groups actually put aside any differences they have, and they came together, you know, really as one. And so it was in many ways a convergence that we haven't seen in quite some time. But we're living in an environment in the country right now where people who hold extremist views are feeling much more empowered to be public about them. And some of that being public is just voicing it. Some of it is harassing people, whether in person or online. Some of it is disseminating hate messages, whether it's graffiti or vandalism, and some of it is assaults and violence. And when one of the number one ways you deal with hate and bigotry is we rely on our leaders, whether they're community leaders or whether they're the president or whether they're individual people just walking on the street, to call things out. And so it's critical whenever a hate incident happens, whether it's in a school, whether it's in a public park or a city or something as large as Charlottesville, for people to step up immediately and call it out. And that sends a very critical message. When that message doesn't occur, we end up in a situation where, in some ways where we are right now, where it's inching its way into the mainstream. And we don't want to live in a country where this is accepted. This becomes normal for these kind of events, for this kind of dissemination of hate and bigotry. And unless we call it out, we're actually sending a message to the haters and the bigots that it's okay. You can continue doing what you're doing, and we're not going to say anything about it. Maybe we don't agree, but we're not actually going to call you out on it. And it's really critical that we don't take that approach, that we call it out when we see it. And we certainly encourage school officials to do it, city officials to do it, and we encourage the president to do it in real time.
And is that the approach, again, the Anti-Defamation League, for the average person who saw the events that took place down in Charlottesville, might not be going up to a Boston this weekend, but just has some general concerns about what they see around them? Is that the message? You know, do something and make your voice be heard and not be silent.
I think it's a really important message. People really want to do something. When we have a petition on our website right now, adl.org, where you can actually very quickly send a message to the White House. But we also, on a local level, we're seeing vigils and community gatherings all over the country. And that can be as small as a few people and as large as thousands. We should be encouraging within our own communities, our own elected officials, to be taking a stand if they're not, thanking them when they do. And the other thing that's really critical is that we have these conversations at home, at our dinner table, and with kids. So we live in a society now, because of technology, where everything that we see, you mentioned the Vice video, young kids are seeing that too. And they also heard and saw a tremendous amount of vitriol and rhetoric during the political campaign leading up to the election and in the months since then. And people act out on it. So I think as adults, we have an important role here to be talking to our kids. And educators should be incorporating this into the curriculum. A lot of the hate incidents involve young people. We saw, several, the Holocaust Memorial in Boston was vandalized twice this summer, and by young people in both occasions. The one earlier this week by a 17-year-old. That's an indication that we need to focus on the youngest people in the community.
Indeed. And as we're focusing, seeing what's going to take place in Boston this weekend, I just had a professor from Anna Maria in talking about it. Is this going to be a new norm? Do you see this as being sort of an offshoot of Charlottesville, or will we continue to see sort of more activism from the alt-right on a continual basis?
Well, we can expect it for the foreseeable future. The Boston gathering is really it's an alt-light event, but it is a mechanism for people in this group to essentially bring their views to the streets of America. And so now, they've been talking a lot amongst themselves, whether it's online or in person, spreading their message. This is a way for them to bring their platform and their message to more and more people. And, that's what they're doing.
And did I see, is there a Holocaust denier who is part of that group, or did I read that correctly? I don't have the name here.
I'm not certain, so I probably need to know the name.
Yeah, I'd have to see as well. So
we do know that a lot of people that are part of sort of the alt-light, while they shun white supremacy, they often traffic in conspiracy theories. Often targeting Jews, and there's a fair amount of anti-Semitism in some of their ideology, some of the things they say. We've seen racism, Islamophobia, misogyny, targeting of immigrants, and that impacts people. That impacts a lot of communities.
You call it the alt-light. I'm sure it's it's going to be in our vernacular as we approach this weekend. But is there something to be said to that to again try to sort of normalize in their attempt, if you will, some of these thought behaviors and thought patterns that might be sort of just as dangerous as a vehement alt-right group that some folks might say, I really won't turn out and be associated with, but somehow this is a more palatable version of which it seems to be a little more socially acceptable if that's why you're going out?
Well, look, it's a good strategy. I think we don't want to normalize, groups that are, Islamophobic or anti-Semitic or racist. And I think, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to call things out when they happen. Because if we don't, we are basically accepting it as sort of a normal. And do you want to walk around in a community wherever you may live, and if you see racial epithets spray painted somewhere, or there's a anti-Semitic, or someone who's Muslim is targeted solely because they're Muslim. I think we want to be in communities where those things are not acceptable, where if you do it, there will be consequences. And the communities where people live are going to say it's simply not acceptable. And if you're going to conduct that kind of behavior, you simply can't do it here. You have to go somewhere else.
So Robert, sort of any parting thoughts again for the sort of post-Charlottesville sort of look back and breakdown, but again as we look towards Boston, that you might want to share with viewers here in Providence?
The two sides of some of these ideological debates are not equal, and I think we need to keep that. We need to really keep that in mind. People who want to counter hate, people who want to, support the values that this country was founded upon, and support equality. That's very, very different than the alt-right views, the white supremacist views. And so we're living in a time now when people need to, need to ensure that their moral compass is fully functional. And history will at some point look back on this time and will assess who had a strong moral compass and who did not. I think the vast majority of Americans, people in this community, have a strong moral compass, and now is the time to be guided by it.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time, Robert, to Skype into us here to give us your perspective with the Anti-Defamation League, again, after Charlottesville, kind of looking to see what takes place in Boston, but again, keep engaging in the conversation here for folks, so I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert Trestan, we'll let you go. And